down real quick. Once
Okay.
the stream starts, I'll put out that share link so that you can send those out to your buddies on the internet if they want to watch.
Okay, we'll see what we can come up with.
Okay, I got Rumble. Let me
Excellent.
pop open the chat. It'll be down here in the chat for Rumble right here, and then I'll do YouTube once it kicks in.
Alrighty.
Let's see here. Hit refresh. It says that it is live streaming, so I don't know until I hit refresh on there, but this one is for YouTube. There it is, it's kicking in.
Okay, you sent me the link to Rumble. Hang on a second. It's on the chat.
Yeah, it's right here in the chat thing.
Okay, copy link. I'm going to send that because I just got. Here we go.
There it is, it's kicking in. Okay, audio sounds good on Rumble or YouTube on Rumble. Sounds good on Kick. Rumble's always the last one to kick in, right? I don't know why, but it is. And it's the platform that I'm actually doing all of it off of. That's the kicking the pants. But it is.
Yeah.
And it's the platform. Okay, so we got that one. It all sounds like it's all working out so far. So Bob Dub's in the chat on Rumble already. She said found it, and she said sorry guys. You don't have to apologize. Tiny baby kangaroo doing a shout out for you on Rumble.
We have an audience.
There we go.
Let's show by the quality rather than the quantity of our audience. And now we have the highest quality audience available.
Well, we hold edited versions at a higher standard than live stream.
Yes, of course. Warts and all, as we say in the music business. Nothing like live.
So let me get this waveform up and say something real quick that way.
Test.
Okay, your waveform is coming in fine, so.
Excellent.
Every time you say something, it'll show a waveform. Now, I don't do it for me because it doesn't like my voice very well, so I leave that off there. But
really?
Yeah.
That's unfortunate.
I don't know what it is about my voice. It just does not like it, so.
Odd.
Okay, so we have everything set up and ready to go.
Alrighty. If you want to do our countdown, I'll be ready.
Okay, so let's do the countdown. 3, 2, 1, now.
Hello, everyone. Welcome on board Flight 17 of Clandestine International Airlines. We've departed Lhasa, where it's 39 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny. We are currently just about reaching our cruising altitude of 32,000 feet on our way to Shambhala International Airport at an undisclosed location deep within the Himalayan or possibly Himalayan mountains. And anyone who is listening might want to correct us on that. We're not quite sure of the pronunciation. I am always happy to stand corrected on these things, so please comment if you have a comment to make about that. Let's see, we're all right. Everything looks good. I don't think there's too much in the way of turbulence ahead, although one never knows. I'm going to be flying today with our co-pilot, Roger Hansen. He's also our electronics warfare officer. And I'm going to be turning off the seatbelt light and turning on the smoking lamp. The smoking lamp is lit. Smoke them if you got them. And I am now going to switch on the automatic pilot. And here we are. How are you today, Roger?
I am doing great. Thank you for asking.
Good. I hope your weather has improved.
Oh yeah, it's actually really nice. I'm able to go outside and sit at outside without my jacket on. So it's a nice
Wow.
day. It's really a
You're
nice
not
day.
you're not nearly there in the parts of the country I've been living in lately. So it's nice to know that somebody is experiencing some warm weather. We're currently having an ice storm. Freezing rain and stuff is coming down. But we don't have to worry about that 32,000 feet above sea level because we're cruising along. Weather is a funny thing, though. And there's that story of the butterfly, perhaps even an obsidian winged one that's never been specified, but how a butterfly can flap its wings in one part of the planet and might cause a rainstorm on the other side of the globe. And this has to do with how interconnected everything is. And this brings us to what I was going to talk a little bit about today, dependent co-arising or dependent origination. And Roger, we were talking about this the other night. You were bringing it up. That whole idea that when this happens, that happens.
Yeah.
And the occurrence of this causes the occurrence of that, and how the cessation of this causes the cessation of that. And, when we look at dependent origination, there's, you can read there like 12 steps, and it seems really complicated because he's going on to specific things. Ignorance leads to this, and this leads to that. You have senses, you have sensory contact. Once you have sensory contact, you have cravings. Once you crave, you cling. It's all very specific. But this other idea that when this is, that is, from the arising of this comes the arising of that. When this isn't, that isn't, and from the stopping of this comes the stopping of that. This is a more good general way to look at it, and in a certain sense, it's kind of obvious. As so much Buddhism is, once Westerners started reading it, they're like, "What? These are the secret teachings?" It seems so obvious. It seems so simple. A lot of Buddhism, I think, is very simple, but it is very hard to put into practice. Whether that practice is our outward physical actions, or our practice has to do with our mental attitudes, our mental conversation, the way we talk to ourselves, and simply the way we frame everything. But it sounds really, really remarkably simple. But when you think about it, these statements have to do with two aspects of this interconnectedness. When the Buddha said, "When this is, that is," he's saying how very often when something happens, you have an immediate result. There's an immediate, and an example that's often used is if you take your finger and you take and touch something very hot, like a hot stove, or put it into a fire, that will immediately cause pain. And if you immediately pull the hand out, as we usually do, the pain will stop. Although it might be a bit sore, the burning itself stops. His other statements about how from the arising of this comes the arising of that, and from the stopping of this comes the stopping of that, that's talking about something different. That's another, these are causal principles. This is causality we're talking here. And this is this has to do with time. So that you've got a connection between events over time, and you've got connections between events in the present moment. And these two principles intersect. So you've always got the moment influencing the moment, and you've got the past influencing the moment. And it's very, when you say this, that, we're speaking linearly. Our language is restricted to sequential statements. But this arising, this not only, spontaneously, not only this immediate arising, but this arising over time is happening with every single thing that we experience all the time, and also all the things that we don't experience all the time. So it's an amazingly convoluted sort of pattern of interaction. But one aspect of it that Buddhism has always worked with has to do with the idea of scale invariance, they call it in chaos theory. Basically, that which is on a small scale is repeated on a larger scale. And this is fractals, right? So in Buddhism, when, for example, they talk about rebirth, being one, that you are one being and then you become another being. This is something we observe in ourselves every day. We're constantly taking on new identities. We take on an identity when we go into work. When we leave work, that identity goes away, and after work, we go to meet some of our friends to go fishing or play music or do another activity like that, a recreational activity. Another self takes birth. And this self has nothing or very little to do with the self that was previously working in an office or perhaps working on an oil rig or doing whatever their job is, where you have to have all of this incredible complete mindset that you put yourself into, especially if you're doing a complicated task. Then boom, you go to that. So this is what we observe in our everyday life, that the mind does this. The extrapolation is that this also happens when the physical body goes. The mind keeps going on. And this happens from moment to moment and in time. So that we see that in a small amount of time, we can get a hint at a larger amount of time. We can have an understanding of larger things. It's like the old thing about how if there are spiritual beings that are more advanced than me, God, if you want us to talk about God, although that's very far away, I can't understand God. I can't say anything about God that isn't a lie, because the moment I use human language, I'm going to be limiting God. I'm not going to be able to convey God's attributes accurately. The only thing I can do accurately, perhaps, is say what God is not. Although you can even argue about that. But so I can say, though, I am to God something that's beyond my understanding, as my cat is to me, or in sense of the ultimate God, as this amoeba is to me. I can understand that relationship I have with a being on the, if you'll forgive the expression, someone lower down on the chain of being, if you like. And that gives me some inkling of what my relationship is to a being on a higher chain, higher on the chain of being than I. So we can use the things that we can understand to try to have an understanding of what we can't understand. We can't understand it, but we can at least understand a way of understanding, if that makes any sort of sense. And this is all we can do as limited beings. But that was not originally what I was going to talk about. Oh,
It was good stuff though.
it
Because
is. It is.
because the thing I've been finding out is they have a name for it. It's the chains of what is it? The 12 chains of something.
Oh, the dependent origination, yeah.
I mean, that's actually pretty interesting. And like every time I hear you talking, you're always talking about the Four Noble Truths. And that really sticks out to me because of when it comes to this type of topics, they say that it's not really a lack of information, but it's like a fundamental misunderstanding of the nature of reality, specifically ignorance of the Four Noble Truths. Then you have impermanence, which is anicca, and
Yeah.
then there's also the non-existence of permanent, which is the independent self. And I know we were talking about maybe getting into talking about the self too. Um,
Yes. That's a wonderful can of worms to open up. People have been arguing about that for a long time.
Yeah.
Well, the Four Noble Truths are where we start from.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, and that's one of my big things is our problems come from our ignorance. We simply aren't aware of what's going on. We have wrong view about it. But the thing to remember about the Four Noble Truths and about Buddhism's teachings in general is that they are very specifically focused on suffering. As the Buddha said, he said, I teach two things and only two things, suffering and how to end suffering, or it can be called stress and how to end stress. Dukkha is the word, and it's very difficult to translate into English. So when we're ignorant of the Four Noble Truths, it means that we're ignorant of what the causes of suffering are and how we can end suffering. So this is very important if we want to end our suffering. And of course, if you don't want to end your suffering, then that's okay. Nobody's forcing you to do this. I think you have to be at a point where you've exhausted all of the impermanent joys and you start seeing through them. You start seeing through how so many of the pleasures we pursue they're inconstant, they're impermanent, they do not last. And as a result, they are going to be stressful no matter how pleasurable they are. And as I've doubtless often said before, the trouble with pleasures is they end. We used to have a joke that marijuana has one terrible side effect. It wears off. And the same can be said for any drug that you're like really into. So when something goes like that, we have a pleasure, it's gone, and what do we have left? We have regret. We don't have the pleasure anymore. Very often we regret what we've done to gain that pleasure. And very often we see how short-sighted we were. And this isn't bad to see this if it can help spur us on to finding a way out of the trap that we build for ourselves. So, yeah, ignorance is how it all starts. And it seems to me that addressing our ignorance, if we can just understand what's going on with our minds, this is a very important step to get away from suffering. And that's really the name of the game in Buddhism, is like, why are we making ourselves suffer? Because suffering is always an option. I speak not of pain. Pain is inevitable. We'll always have pain in this world. But the suffering, the mental anguish that we create over our pain, that's really much more under our control than we think usually. And this isn't our fault. Our society, our culture, our upbringing, everything that we know tells us that we are puppets, that we are helpless. I had to do that because he said this. I had to do that because they said this or they did this to me. I had to do this. I like what the Buddha said about that. He said, nothing anyone else says or does to you can send you to hell. And as someone else said, you can get to this point where you can just decide that you are helpless, that your decisions don't matter, so you just say to hell with it. Except hell shows up. Hell does happen. So we need to end our ignorance, look at what's really going on, and realize how much power we actually have over the situation. We don't have complete power. We can't change reality. I don't know where people got that from. It's an oversimplification and a misreading of these ideas. That if you just think something hard enough, it'll all be okay. No, that's not going to happen. If your thinking could change reality, then nobody would die and we'd all be 20 years old.
That'd be great.
So, it would, and that's a thought, isn't it? And that's a becoming, as they call it in Buddhism. That's a mental image we suddenly have. I mean, I don't know of anyone who is over the age of 40 or 50 that hasn't daydreamed at one time or another about being 20 again or 25 again. And it's a wonderful little world, but it is very impermanent because then the arthritis hits you again. And then you notice the varicose veins. And then you notice how difficult it is to get up out of a chair. I'm describing my own experiences. We all have our own. And this brings you right back. And then, of course, you get upset because you crave being 20 again. You cling to the idea of it. Well, it's like clinging to the idea of owning the moon or eating a 17th piece of chocolate cake, even though you will literally explode like Mr. Creosote in the Monty Python movie.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's actually an interesting example of samsaric thinking, where Mr. Creosote we've all seen the movie Monty Python, The Meaning of Life, the guy that just eats so much that he finally explodes. And this is a great example of being focused on an idea, an image in your head. You've taken on an identity of the guy that wants to satisfy his hunger and will always satisfy his hunger, and he'll always be able to eat because he loves eating, and this is a pleasure that will never end, right? He's trying to make something that is intrinsically impermanent a perpetual part of his life. And we all know people that do this, one object of pursuit or another, one object of desire or another. But in fact, when it comes into the real world, boom, it's an explosion. So yeah, the Four Noble Truths give us knowledge of what's actually happening in our minds. And what's happening is we crave and we cling to what we crave to. And the clinging itself is a suffering. The clinging itself is suffering because it's going to be clinging to something that's not permanent. So what's the solution? Well, we want to find something permanent, don't we? Well, what is permanent? Well, let's look around at the things that aren't permanent. You know, your body is not permanent, right? Your emotions, your desires are not permanent. The world around you is not permanent. So we look within. And one of the things we do is try to bring ourselves into contact with as much reality as we can. Well, what's real? What's real is this present moment that we are experiencing. This very moment, right this second, right this very moment. And in a certain sense, there really is nothing else. So what does this present moment give us? It gives us the ability to think outside of the box. It gives us the ability to think outside of all of the stories we tell ourselves. Because most of the time we're living in a narrative. You know, we tell stories about ourselves. The psychologist Julian Jaynes, you know, he was going to come up eventually, had a wonderful definition of the ego, the I. And he said it is basically an imaginary self about which you tell a story. And if you're living in that story, you're never really going to have any power over yourself, your life. None of your decisions are going to be very good. But if we can be in the present moment, that gives us a seat of power. When we're right here, we can look back at the past and we can look at our projections, our hopes for the future, without falling into them and living in them. Because, you know, you start living in the past and then you start comparing it to what you don't have now or what you do have now. You know, I don't have that anymore. And, but now I've got arthritis and I never had that before, but I don't have, you know, that young body I used to have. And this is not helpful. I mean, it's good to be aware of these things, obviously, but not to the point where you make such emotional investment in them that you start crying because, you know, you're clinging to these things that simply do not exist. You're clinging to unreality, and you're very real. You're very real. So what can we do? Well, I mean, when we look at this moment, according to Buddhism, the present moment is really composed of three things, right? This has to do with karma. Karma is a psychological state. Karma is intention. It's also action, but it includes mental action. And your mental actions are your intentions. You have to intend something before you do something. Even if you think you're doing something automatically, there are things going on in your mind that are going to determine what your reaction is going to be. So all of your actions are the results of your intentions. Another way to put it is All of your actions are the result of your karma. All of your situation is the result of your intentions, your karma. So the present moment is in part the result of your past intentions, right? The present is composed of what we've done in the past. It also has to do with your present intentions, right? You have intentions right now. And the other part of the present moment of the three parts is the results of your present intentions. So you've got the results of your past intentions. You can't change that at all. You've got the results of your present intentions, but because these are present intentions, those you can change. So this tells us that in the moment of now, you have the power to choose your intentions, to choose what the results of your intentions are going to be. And the more skillful, the more virtuous our intentions, the more skillful, virtuous, our life will be, our situation will be. Now, and this was pointed out to me recently, unless you've got all three of those parts, you do not have the present. Now, we have no control over what we have intended in the past. The past is solid. It's like the blockchain. You know, everything from the past is kind of written into you, right? Your karma. But we have control over our present intention. So if we can become intentionless, then we will produce no new results. The present moment will fall apart and we go beyond space and time. Now, obviously, we're not going to physically go beyond space and time. But this allows our minds to no longer be chained down by these causalities. Now, how do you be intentionless? That's the difficulty. That's the key. And you know, when I say you have to not have intentions, that's the same thing as when you read about Buddhism where they say the goal is not to make any more karma, not to make any more karma, if you like. And as has been pointed out, well, you do have all these intentions in Buddhism. You do have things that you're supposed to do. You're supposed to develop right view. You're supposed to have skillful intentions. Yes, this is the karma that leads to the ending of karma. You are going to have these intentions at the state you're in, so you want them to be skillful. You want them to be taking you to a place where you can get beyond them. And the old metaphor is the raft that you take across the river to get to the other shore. You build the raft and you get out on the raft and you kick your feet and it holds you up, or you sit on it and pull it and you get over to the other shore. You don't pick the raft up and carry it with you anymore. In the same way, all of these techniques, they are a means, but they are not an end. Or as it's been said, the raft doesn't create the other shore. The raft simply gets you there. So if we can be in the present moment and also focus ourselves to the point where we can get past intention, our minds will be freed from samsara. Our minds will be freed from their enslavement to their perceptions of the physical world. And then we can go from there. So I think that's my talk for tonight, Roger. It was a bit chaotic.
No, actually, it was actually pretty good. I mean, I enjoyed it because it kind of
you got me going on those 4 noble truths. You got me going on those. That was a good thing to bring up.
The thing that really stands out to me about a lot of that, though, is like here in the West, and especially people who speak English, we use the word name all the time, you know, and
right.
With Buddhists, they call it the name, the Nama.
Yes.
And that's really what sticks out to me when it comes to a lot of the stuff you were talking about, because that has to do with like your feelings, your perceptions, and your intention.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that goes along with the physical body. You know.
Yes. That's something that Taoism talks about as well. Taoism and Buddhism is very congenial, but Nama is sometimes paired with Rupa. and I've heard it translated as name and form.
Mm-hmm.
And once we begin naming things, you know, in Taoism, they say first there was the one gave birth to two, and the two gave birth to 10,000 things. We start differentiating that. This is that. We give it a name, we give it a form.
Mm-hmm.
And yet we are so interconnected, as dependent origination tells us, and as all we have to do is look. And I've talked about this before often. I mean, yes, you think of yourself as this separate unit surrounded by skin, but the skin is porous. It has bumps that go out. It has hollows. It breathes constantly. You respire through your skin. And the fact of your existence is as inexorably bound up with the existence of the sun as it is with the existence of the blood in your veins. I mean, if all the blood in your veins disappeared, then you would die. If the sun disappeared, you would die. You know, we're so dependent upon the atmospheric conditions on the planet, the weather, the light, this, that. All of this is driven by the sun. So our connectedness is demonstrable even from a physical reductionist standpoint. And when we look within, I think we see the same thing with that. But yeah, once we start naming things, we're already, at least from a Taoist point of view, we've already screwed up. You know, there's I've heard it described sometimes as one of the goals of meditation is a dissolution of the separation between subject and object, where you no longer perceive any difference between you and the universe around you.
Right.
Which is an interesting description of a state which, you know, these spiritual states are fascinating, and I think they're very rewarding and can be very liberating. But at the same time, you can't operate in the world that way necessarily. You've also got to, even if you no longer have that idea of a separate self, you still have to operate in a world in which this is how you negotiate life. You know, you've got to go to the store, you've got to do dishes, you've got to buy things and talk to other people, you've got to go to work. So you've got to be able to operate in it without completely investing all of your emotional and psychological energy.
I find it interesting though that like when it comes to like feelings and perceptions and intentions, they also start getting into like the psychophysical they call it the psychophysical components of being and stuff like that, and then they start talking about like using your sense of faculties like your eyes, your ears, your nose, your tongue, and that's also going along with like your feelings and your perception and intention, you know. So you got all of that going on, and then there's a point where all of this has contact, you know what I mean? And it's
Yes.
when they all meet and they actually and that's consciousness. It's like what you hear, what you see, what you feel, what you smell. Everything is connected with your feelings and your perception. And it's
Yeah, this is what we focus on. This is how.
oh, hold on, guys. I believe that got cut off. I am going to call him back. We ended up having V in and we didn't.
There you are. We had a little turbulence here.
Yeah, we
I
had
think we
V in.
lost our link with the satellite there briefly. Thank you, Roger, for jumping to the fore and
We
getting
had
us back online here.
we had V on before this, and we forgot to hang up and start it over again. So that was my bad. I should have caught that. We
Oh,
hit,
did we lose some of it?
no, it nothing was lost. It was just that once more than two people on Teams get on, then it's limited to a 1 hour meeting.
Oh, I see. I
So
see.
so what I should have done is before the stream start the call all over again and then go into it because then it would
Right. Yeah.
so I
Well, that's all right. The technical difficulty show.
yeah
Every Tuesday we have the technical difficulty show, and using the metaphor of our clandestine international airlines flight number 17, we've just had a a close call with a low-flying saucer, but co-pilot Roger Hansen was able to use his electronics warfare skills to shoot off some drones off the sides of the ship, and we were able to dodge our way out of the tractor beam area. They were trying to beam us up, who knows where. But that'll be a show for the new show you've got coming up, Roger. What was the title of that again?
That one is going to be. Now I forgot. I've got so caught up in this cool Buddhist stuff, I forgot the name of my own show.
Well, you were talking about radioactive chicken heads.
Yeah, that
Um,
is one of the things that have inspired me to do this. Now, the show that I am coming up with is going to be far more sophisticated than radioactive chicken heads. Just so everybody knows, and
of course. Yeah, I would think so.
it's going to be
Very
called
smart.
Stir the Fallout. It's going to be a parody show where
Nice,
we're gonna have fun, and it's gonna be entertaining for everybody who wants to come there and
nice,
participate in it. So
nice.
yeah.
And I know there's some interesting people are already kind of lined up, so I think it'll provide a lot of fun and surprises
Hmm.
for people that tune in. So looking forward to that, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I think there's
Yes,
a lot of possibilities in that show.
I do too, because like there's a lot of things about you that a lot of people don't know that I think we should introduce to the world.
I don't know about that. There's something mankind was not meant to know, my friend. uh,
But yeah,
but I think it's got a lot of good possibilities. A lot of good possibilities. Uh,
now
but yeah,
before we got cut off, we were talking about I believe you guys refer to it as Sparsa.
mm,
Is that what it is? Sparsa?
how do you spell it?
Sparsa.
Versa sounds good to me. How do they define it?
Um, when a sense faculty like the eye, a subject object like visual form, and consciousness meet, contact
Yeah,
occurs.
yeah, that's interesting because consciousness is part of that contact, which is reminiscent of modern quantum physics. Very
Hmm.
interestingly, that says that consciousness is necessary, but a big factor there is that consciousness is going to determine what you perceive. The mind comes first. The mind is the forerunner. The mind comes before everything else. And as I was saying earlier, even in things that we think we have an instantaneous reaction to, there are mental constructions that are going to be the determining factors of how we react to things. Even if these when I say mental constructions, I don't mean necessarily ruminative thought, but things we might call subconscious reactions. This is still consciousness. And I've talked before about one of my early difficulties with Buddhism was understanding the difference between the Buddhist idea of consciousness, which is probably closer to what we would call awareness, rather than the introspective, ruminative consciousness where you're talking to yourself. Um, that's the source of much of our problems because of the way we talk to ourselves and the sentences we say to ourselves and the things we say. And this comes from the way we mentally frame things, the way we feel about things. They're called feeling tones sometimes. And I was in a nursing home some time ago, and there was a guy there who was on the way out, deep in senescence. And he would sit there or lie there. He was in a bed with his eyes closed, and every so often he would just make an angry statement. Screw you guys. Screw you all. I, I'm 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 modifying my language, but you know what he probably said.
Yeah.
And he just had these little angry outbursts. And I was saddened because this is an untrained mind. This is a mind that is talking to itself in angry ways, in ways of fearfulness and loneliness. And it's a voice that I've heard myself, that we've all heard. you know. But when we come to the end of our lives, we don't want that to be the last voice speaking to us within our heads. And this is where we go if we don't train our minds, if we don't get out of the power of these phrases and these sentences, which are themselves expressions of these thoughts. And I know I've heard you can't, that's so unnatural. You can't just fabricate your thoughts. You can't just think certain. Well, we do all the time. We do it unconsciously. We let other people do it to us. The way people treated us, especially our childhoods up, the way people that we've allowed to get close to us treat us, the way we treat ourselves. And why not take conscious charge of that? Why not take? And it's not easy, man. It's not easy, but I don't know anything better to do. I don't know anything that is better to do, because everything else just leads to more suffering. And I've had enough suffering. I've had enough suffering. I'm tired of it.
I'm the same way. I agree
There you
with
go.
you. I'm agree
Think
with
we
you
all-
100%.
Well, Roger, I think I'm getting a signal from Shambhala International Airport, so I think we're going to be starting our approach pattern. So, ladies and gentlemen, I am going to turn off the smoking lamp. Stewards will be by to collect rolling papers, hash pipes, or anything else you might have. The seatbelt light is now lit. This is where sound effects could do a little. And please return your seat to an upright position. We're making our approach to Shambhala International Airport at an undisclosed location in either the Himalayan or Himalayan mountains. The weather there is, as always, perfect because it's a large underground city leading to the secret caverns of the inner hidden hollow earth. But that's another story for another show. I'd like to thank everyone who took the time to listen, and thank especially people that are still there after hearing the beginning of this and they're still with us. But before we go, we should be sharing our socials. Roger, why don't you start with that and tell people how they can contact you, the great Roger Hansen?
If you want to contact me, you can find my community on Teams. It's Rogers Hangout. You can also find Rogers Hangout on Element Matrix. Besides those, I do have the wonderful World of Weirdness, which is on Discord. You can find me there as well. Now, when it comes to platforms, the only two that I go to is X, Roger Hansen at ROGLOL1973, and mine's at Roger_Hansen. Getting better at that.
You are. And of course, you can take a look at some of my thoughts and ideas at my website, navakavada.org. That's Navakavada. It's spelled just like it sounds. We also have Navakavada on YouTube, and there's also a BitChute channel. You can find me on minds.com, AutoX. And also, you might just run into me down at the corner. You never know.
Okay, and before you go, let me say, Tiny Baby Kangaroo said that she could hear us whenever we went off, but we were back. So she confirmed that the audio and everything was straightened out before.
Excellent.
So
Thank you, Tiny Baby Kangaroo. We're going to give you part producer credits for this one.
yes, we will.
Put that in the credit. All right. Well, we're beginning our final descent. I see the doors are opening on the side of the mountain, and yeah. So I'm going to sign off now. Thanks everyone for being part of our show. Looking forward to having you back next week on Tuesday. And until then,